Our guest on the pod today is Rashad James. The New York native has been playing professional basketball since 2013. After a couple of years stateside, he began his overseas career by going to South Korea. Since then, he's played in Poland, the U.S. again, Croatia, Turkey, Germany, France, Italy, Morocco, the Dominican Republic, Canada, and now in Abu Dhabi, where he joins us from today. He's also represented Team USA, and we'll talk about that with him in the extras, so be sure to check those out as well. Anyway, I'm out of breath from all the places you've been, but welcome to the pod, Rashad. We're thrilled to have you sit down and talk with us about your experiences overseas.
Appreciate you, Andy. I'm happy to be here. Finally, after a couple of tag runs, we are here, and yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yep, and so that's one of the things about we talked about this off the pod is with our guests is sometimes we're factoring in our schedules, your schedule, and time zones. So this is sort of one of those things that hopefully our listeners appreciate the treat that we're able to provide here, not only in terms of talking to such great people, but in terms of making it all work. So that's a little bit about how we all come together. And so you're sitting down from us now about 9 hours difference. So we're doing it on a weekend. You're well into the night and we're a little bit in the afternoon. So that's where we're at.
Right.
But before we get to your pro career, we're going to kind of jump back a little bit to right before you have a college career that's a little like non-traditional, few spots. And I kind of, when we've sat with people before that have like those sorts of experiences, like to ask the question, do you think that that sort of in a way prepares you a little bit for your overseas career? Because now you're going, sometimes a couple places in a season, or you're basically you're not standing in one spot for long. And as we kind of talked a little bit off the pod too, that getting used to a new place can kind of be an adjustment. So with your college career, your most notable spot was Iona. But again, jumping back to it, and just before I keep rambling on, would you say that that's probably something that prepared you well for your overseas career?
Yeah, I would say so. A little bit in regard to why I was changing schools in the first place. It was just, I had a pretty stellar high school career at White Plains High School, and a notable head coach in Spencer Mayfield. I thought he did a very, very great job preparing me for the next step as far as college. But due to that, as far as my SAT scores, is why I went to St. Thomas Aquinas at first. So I was like, I'll go to D2 school that was close. My mother was, she's a single mother. She kind of had that whole don't want, the egg to travel too far away from the nest type of thing. But I did the whole college visit thing at St. Thomas Aquinas, and I did my thing that first year as far as my rookie year. But unfortunately, coming to that midpoint in that year, I had like a knee injury, like a meniscus injury. So for me, my plan was to go to St. Thomas Aquinas and then transfer to a Division I school. But because of me getting hurt, I figured that, the numbers that I put up, they weren't sufficient enough. So I spent another year there, dominated the way that I felt comfortable enough. Then that's when I transferred to Iona. And I had to redshirt that year going from D2 to D1. I thought it was a really great experience. I met some great guys. I competed my butt off to earn the right spot and a scholarship on that team. But even so, was there. Education was great. I was able to graduate from Iona, but before finishing my senior year, I traveled to Northwood University. I don't know if you're familiar with Rolly Massimino, legendary coach out of Villanova. He passed away. I want to say 3 years ago now. I would say 3 years ago. But he honestly was probably a main catalyst in like how I approach as my approach to a professional to this day. There's one line that I would never forget that he told me. He said, "There's a thin line between goodness and greatness." And I hold that to anything in preparation with my life, my wife, my daughter, and of course on the basketball court. So me traveling from school to school was more or less finding a coach that was going to have appreciation in me and seeing the talent that I had and what I could give to the game.
You had no way of knowing this. This was actually going to be my next question, but I was going to ask you, was there anybody in your college career that helped prep you for the next step of your career? You unsolicited gave me the high school coach that prepped you for your college career. You laid the breadcrumbs there for the college coaches that prepped you for your pro career. But I'll ask you that question explicitly, so basically, so you can expand on that.
Yeah, so yeah, Rolly Massimino, the way that he brought me in, it was just he was this short Italian guy. When I mean vintage Italian guy, just it's all love. Come to my house, like it's mi casa su casa. This is exactly what it was, and that wasn't something that I was experiencing earlier, um, within playing basketball on the college level. And the minute like I kind of felt that hominess, it kind of I would say it evolved like this other person in me, as far as just the professionalism and seeing that, oh snap, there actually are people out there that um that could do good by me. So yeah, he really taught me how to work my butt off, how to respect the game, how to respect my body, and among all things, just be a good person. So yeah, like to this day, yeah, I miss that guy, man.
With having somebody that's such an instrumental person at the college level that kind of prepped you not only for the next step, but really for a life in this particular instance. But at what point in your college career did you actually start realistic or I wouldn't say realistically thinking, but in terms of tangibly thinking about like, all right, I do want to be a professional. It's something that I know I can do. And what does that look like for you? A lot of our guests, a vast majority of them had an idea that they wanted to play professional, but like, how did you actually go, all right, getting down into brass tacks? Who did you work with? And in terms of what did that look like getting you to your first job in the D League?
Yeah, so I had a guy, his name was Tom Sampono. He was one of these coaches that I played with. I would say pretty much like recreationally, throughout my time around White Plains, New York, and then he actually introduced me to an AAU coach. Can't remember his name for the life of me right now. But we were a part of the Westchester Hawks, the select team, and through him and him seeing my development as a basketball player, he introduced me to my first agent at the time, and basically it was kind of like from there I was like on this trial run essentially. So I went from basically signing like unofficially signing with this agent, got flown out to Sacramento to meet with an official basketball trainer that he worked out with a lot of NBA guys, current and ex, and from there I was pretty much in this situation of being like, all right, let's see if this kid got it or not, and I proved my worth. So that was pretty much the transition from the college to the pro aspect, and yeah, and it was definitely a grind for sure.
Now, not to skip over a couple years because they're unimportant, but it's not necessarily the focus of our podcast. He did play in the then D League. Now it's basically the G League, but it's the then D League with the Reno Bighorns. Become a professional stateside, so you don't have to deal with, being in a new country or anything like that. It's certainly, a new area that you may not be accustomed to, but at least it's in the same country, some comforts, and, you know where you are, you have your bearings. But in 2015, you decided to branch out and go overseas. What was the decision like, first of all, to say, all right, I'm going to look at overseas opportunities as opposed to what's going on here in America with potential NBA opportunities, first of all, and then second of all, when you do get to South Korea, what's your experience like in terms of trying to get adjusted, and what was the experience like playing in South Korea?
I mean, the whole thing for me when it came down to wanting to make that transition to playing overseas, I knew that I always had the capability of playing in the NBA. And I always knew that, through playing, the experience and the development would always like come to be. And I was always somebody that I love to be in the gym. My whole thing was, if the NBA wanted me and if I was overseas, they would find me. Like that was one of the number one things. And I had spent time even playing in the D League, doing what I did as far as putting up the numbers, and then playing in summer leagues and XYZ, to have a number of people tell me, yes, you are capable of playing in the NBA. Obviously, it's a timing thing, and halfway a little bit of luck. But at the end of the day, there's a living out there that can be made, and a comfortable living, So that for me was part of the reason why I went to South Korea. outside of them, paying like very well, it was a competitive league. I want to say they only had about 10 teams. So it was 10 teams within Korea just beating up on each other. And that was my first experience of learning how to like be a pro and then understanding how cutthroat it can be also. So if you're not doing your job, see you later, somebody else is coming in. So for me, it was a constant, all right, I gotta be in the gym. If I'm at home and I'm relaxing, all right, there's always that constant reminder in my head, maybe somebody's working out, get your butt back into the gym. Um, culturally, as far as like that culture shock, um, didn't really affect me that much. I've always been comfortable with leaving, like basically leaving the nest, as you would say. Like I don't have no real attachments to home, even though I love my family and my friends and stuff like that. Um, Nobody within the city of I was in this small city called Wanju, and nobody spoke English at all. We the my I had a teammate. His name was Rod Benson. So it was only two Americans on the like two foreigners basically that were allowed on each team. We had a translator that basically was around with us. He was Korean, but he spoke English as well. He traveled with us wherever we needed to go. Coach spoke a little bit of English, very, very little bit, like very, very little bit. And then as far as the teammates as well, a little bit as well. So it got me comfortable with being more alone, I would say. Um, and that could be a good or bad thing. But for me, I guess I was still able to be sociable as well. But yeah, it was a really good first experience for me as overseas pro.
So finish with them in that season, and Poland is actually going to be the one that's next. It's a when we usually talk to people, they usually say that it's a good league, that there's some things off the court in terms of transportation that leave a little bit to be desired. So curious to know what your experience was like there and what Poland was like for you.
Poland was interesting, and these things about Europe, man, it's always things always somewhat kind of start out smooth, and then it just starts to get choppy, choppy, choppy. And if you're very fortunate, if you could just have a smooth year all year round. But the concept of it being choppy was in regard to the coach. He was Serbian. I don't know if you're familiar with like Serbian style or just how they approach either life in general, but my way or the highway, and I'm cool with that as long as it's fair. Um, and
This is one of those moments that I like to tell people that whether you actually believe me or not, it's just like, oh, I know, but tell our listeners what is it like.
yeah, exactly. So it's like for me, it was like this was my first experience with like a Serbian person in general, let alone a coach. And he just had a way of, he brought out that fire in you, which was great. But then he just had his overworking. This is just a European way that this is what I learned later, but I didn't know at the beginning. Just work, 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 work. Um, Day off, not really. If you have a day off and then you come in for the next practice, you're not going to touch a ball. You're basically just going to be a track runner. Um, and again, it was one of those situations that started off with me going there. They know what I was capable of, being the man from the beginning, and then him just flipping the script and kind of um, shifting his energy with me. And again, that was something that I didn't know at the time. That is just Europe in general. But I didn't know how to wrap my head around that and cope with it. And again, me being a competitor, I always had that like this is crazy. Like what's the reasoning behind him doing this? I'm getting no explanation. I'm putting the numbers up. Like what's the problem here? So that was very hard for me. I'm used to the winters because I'm from New York, but damn, it was cold. It was really, really cold out there. And not being able to have that off the court life kind of affected me in that regard. And yeah, I mean it ended, we parted ways on good terms. The fans out there were great. The staff was great. Still even some of these guys, as far as like the training staff and assistant coaches, keep in contact to this day on Instagram.
I'm going to go to my next question, but I think that this is a subject that's ripe for one of the extra segments that we'll do in terms of dealing with adversity. So I'll make a soft plug for that while we're recording. But the next, stop that you have is actually back to New York with the Westchester Knicks. What was the reasoning at that point in time of going back? You'd at this point started an overseas career. And again, you'll go back out overseas, but what was your reasoning at this point in time for coming back to the Westchester Knicks?
It was like that, like, I'm coming home. I'm coming. It was one of those moments for me because it was like I left, I played in the States, but it wasn't in New York. But so I was on the West Coast. And then I was like, all right, let me get a taste of this overseas life. And then I'm like, I'm still young. If I'm playing in New York, it's a great market. Let me see what energy I could put forth now that I had a little bit of experience overseas, that maybe I would generate some more love with the NBA. So that was one of my reasons why I came and wanted to come back to the States, and just to play in front of my friends and family is like the greatest energy that I needed at the time when being in Poland and kind of experiencing that like a little bit of a sour moment as far as having to deal with a new coach and like a Serbian personality. So that was really really good for me. And I was the gym that we was playing in was the Westchester County Center. I've been playing in there since I was a kid, and playing in tournaments and stuff like that from high school and everything like that. I was so familiar with that gym. It was like playing in a park. So for me, yeah, it was really great to make that decision to play for Westchester.
Figured that was the reasoning, especially being able to go home, but figured I would ask it. There are a few softballs here for sure. So have that really great experience, get to go home, get to play in front of your friends and family. Like you said, there's a lot of familiarity there. That gym was basically like you could probably put on a blindfold and walk around the gym and know exactly where you are. But then you do venture back out overseas, and we were talking off the pod that this is one of those spots that was very meaningful to you and your wife, actually. You wind up going back overseas to Croatia. Take us through what that season was like for you in terms of on the court and off the court, and why it holds such a special place in your family's heart.
Yeah, Croatia was great because it was almost like, so coming from New York, and you see the big buildings, the XYZ, went to another capital in Zagreb. So it was buildings everywhere. It was open space. It was just people, it was tourists. It was the energy. Like for me, that was I love being around people. It's like I feed off of energy. I'm also energy, but I feed off of energy as well. And then playing for that team, they're a notable team throughout the Euro Cup. And we won the Croatian League that year. Fell short in the playoffs in the Euro Cup, but even in the ABA, we were in the playoffs. Tough matchup against Partizan, and then Red Star, actually. So we beat Partizan, and then tough matchup against Red Star, where we fell short to win the ABA. But the whole year was just great, just the competitiveness. And we were in 3 leagues. So we were in the Croatian League, the ABA, and Euro Cup. So it was traveling nonstop. I was getting to see all these different countries, different cultures. I love food. And so it was just, we would practice. Basically, essentially, they were just like cliff note practices. This is the competition. We're gonna run through the scouting, then we get our work in. So I'm basically getting to do my individual workouts, get my weightlifting in, and then we're traveling and just hooping. Like that's all you can ask for. Especially as an overseas player, you honestly want to minimize practicing as much as possible. So there was just a really great experience, and I had a great team, great teammates, great staff from top to bottom. Everybody was completely professional. And that's one of the main reasons why I love this so much.
Thanks to SeatGeek for sponsoring Expat Hoops. We recently became a brand ambassador for them. SeatGeek is a ticket app that takes the confusion out of buying tickets. They offer a 0 to 10 score on each ticket to know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. Green means good, red means bad. You get the idea. It's a really easy way to get tickets to events. Plus, our viewers get $20 off their first ticket purchase with the Expat Hoops code. Click the link in the description to download the app. Remember the code Expat Hoops, EXPATHOOPS, all one word, to save yourself $20 off your first ticket purchase with SeatGeek.
So again, getting back to the fact that like you're kind of going higher and higher at this point in time. It's going to be the first time that you play in Turkey. You're going to come back to the country, but in your first landing spot with Turkey, take us through what things were like at that point in time.
Well, yeah, Turkey was good in the concept of the competition level. Again, I did fall into another Serbian coach this time around. I know how to deal with him. And it wasn't like one of those like, oh my God, what's happening moments for me. It was just like, okay, this is what you do. I know it. No complaints. Smaller city than obviously Croatia. And that was a little bit of an adjustment for me. But at the same time, living space was great. That's another thing that, as a little sidebar for people that don't really know about the overseas lifestyle, is that you get a fully furnished apartment and then you get your own car. So essentially all you have to worry about is groceries and shopping or whatever you want to do. So in that regard, like everything was perfectly set up. We were in Turkey is honestly one of the top leagues of the world, like to this day. So we were in great competition. We competed at a very high level. And for me, it was really good. I was playing against like the best of the best. And that's what I considered myself. Like that was the point of me being a basketball player. Is I started out as this kid that was like essentially a nobody knew about me or whatever the case is, to competing against all these guys that probably had the training or the basketball when they were 4 years old and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, and now I caught you guys. And if anything, either exceeding or holding my weight in essentially, right? And I just felt that league, it put me in a position to, just keep leveling up. Honestly, I had a complete different mindset being in Turkey. I mean, I would say that Croatia was the transitioning point for it, but it was always higher level.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's really hard to kind of explain, that there are some of these countries that are great spots, but then there are these talent bumps with the leagues. And that's exactly kind of what I was getting to, is the fact that like Turkey's the next bump. Like this is a point in your career where you can see the steps, and this is where it's really starting to, like you said, level up. So you're going to come back to Turkey, but you wind up going to another great league. Again, in terms of speaking of like leveling up, we go to the basketball Bundesliga in Germany. You spent time with two clubs there. So take us through what that season was like. And if you could not only give the context why there were two different teams, but if you could kind of compare and contrast them a little bit, given the fact that you were with two different teams at one point in time in one season.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was one of those points that I referred to earlier before we got onto the pod. Was I was playing so well, so consistently, because I knew there was that rhythm, and there was the connection between me and the coach of, all right, this is when you're playing this is the first quarter amount of time. If you're hitting shots or not, I know when I'm coming out. Second quarter, I know when I'm going in, I know when I'm coming out, and so on and so forth. And I was in that zone of that rhythm, the comfort zone, with my teammates. The city, like Germany is such a beautiful city. It's clean. For the most part, everybody speaks English.
And this is Bonn at this point. Well, I mean, it's your whole country experience, but this is in Bonn, and especially we were talking a little bit of the context here for off the pod was essentially that you and the coach, like you said, had almost kind of like this synergy at the beginning. And then
yeah, exactly. So it's there's only so much things you can control in this life at the end of the day. And if we start to lose games, regardless of what the reasoning is, there could be pressure from the top on him, and then that can fall on the team. So from that perspective, I understood it. But at the same time, I didn't want it to affect my career or my life. And that was the only reason why I decided to make a change to go from Bonn to which both, they're great clubs, great organizations. Was a situation where they were in the Euro Cup or just finishing, because I think they might have missed it by a game or two, but they then still had games left in the Euro Cup, and I already had experience within Euro Cup, so it was an easy transition for me. And they were also playing very well within the BBL. So for me, it was one of those situations where I am playing for a different club in the same league, but it was like clockwork for me. As soon as I learned the offense, everything as far as the fluidity and the comfort, it came secondhand. And on top of the coach being very positive, like positive reinforcement, like Rashad, basically just play how you played in Bond. And I was just like, all right, say no more. It was easy after that.
So we do want to kind of mention the fact that you do sign originally a contract to go to France's LNB, the top, the A League, but due to like an injury at that point in time, didn't actually wind up going there. Does sound like you got to go around and see the sites as we were talking about off the pod. It sounds like it was a great organization. They took you around, you got to see the city, so you got the benefits of at least kind of seeing what it was like there, but no actual playing. So this is where you do wind up going back to Turkey, though, with another club. So what was a little bit different? I guess this is probably the first time, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're going back to a country, have some level of familiarity. So take us through what that season was like with a different club.
It was still interesting because in the concept of they had their team, right? So I guess it's one of those situations where you're like the new kid coming to a new school and everybody's already situated with everybody, or you're that new kid in that class. And it's just like, yeah, I'm a grown man and I'm a professional. And I know how to, keep everything. Oh, hi, nice to meet you, whatever the case is. But there's still chemistry has to be formed one way or the other. And it was rocky in that regard because the coach knew what he was getting out of me when he called me. He knew that I played in the league before and I killed it. And he just couldn't find the synergy where I could help the team consistently. So they had a system that was, easy. It's pretty, you got to, if you're a pro athlete overseas, you got to be able to adjust to systems like at the drop of a hat. And I think we did the best that we could. And again, it was still a great experience. I knew Turkey well. And being in Ankara, which was the capital, it was still a great experience. But it was an up and down season in that regard because of that chemistry not being found, and just one of those it is what it is moments, honestly.
So next up is Italy, another country that you at least professionally never been to before. What were your experiences like playing at that particular time with Ravenna?
So yeah, that was my first time playing in second division at that point in my career. Everywhere else has been, first division. And I may have came into the situation a little egotistical. And this is something I don't think I've even voiced out, but I knew it within me. I came into this like, oh man, I've played first division everywhere. Like what is this? I'm not taking this seriously. And I think that kind of set the tone for how that year went. Outside of, I always put the work in, but essentially I didn't give my teammates enough credit as far as respect. And again, I say that with no ego at all, to say that I think it pretty much set the tempo for how the year went. We had an up and down kind of a year. We still made the playoffs. I did leave a little bit early. I left in February, honestly. And that's when the Team USA thing came about. But the coach at the time, he was from Milan. So that was the main reason why he was the assistant coach at Milan. So he became the head coach here. And that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to go to Ravenna, because, all right, if I was going to go to a second division situation, I would want at least the coach to have like supreme knowledge of hoops. And he was a really good dude, very passionate of what he, like his approach. But yeah, it was a situation that was great for me in learning as a pro to just calm the hell down and humble yourself. So I take everything as far as like learning from every situation I've been, good or bad. But I consider Ravenna to be one of those moments in my life where I got hit with a taste of stop being so egotistical. And then I was able to then turn that and shift that into really good energy when I went to the national team with Team USA.
In our house, when we use a VPN, we are sure to use NordVPN. NordVPN secures up to 6 devices and is compatible with Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, iOS, and even your Wi-Fi router. Plus, it's no risk to your wallet. Head over to their website for pricing or contact customer support 24/7. And remember, your purchase is always safe with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the video description to use our code and make sure you're secure with NordVPN.
We have merch. Head over to the Expat Hoop store where you'll find t-shirts, hoodies, masks, coffee mugs, pint glasses, and more.
It's one of many ways you can show support for the podcast, so head over there and pick up some merch. That link below is in the video description, or you can head over to our website, expathoops.com, and click merch. We offer a couple of different Expat Hoops logos, and we have men's, women's, and kids sizes, so you can get something for everyone.
Have the experience with Italy, like you said, kind of a little bit professionally, a step back, but there's still something that you can take from it. You are the first person that I think we've ever talked to on the pod that's played in this particular league. We've talked to people that have played in Africa before, and I've actually think in Morocco as well. But you do spend your next professional spot in Morocco, playing for the Basketball Africa League inaugural season. Take us through what that was like, not only in terms of kind of going to a new continent, but going to a new league that's kind of starting its way, and one that I think has gotten quite a bit of an attention when it started off.
Yeah, it was. I want to say I did that maybe in the summertime. I think I did. Yeah, it was probably the end of May, I would say. I forgot what year that was. 3 years ago, maybe. Yeah, it was a great experience in the BAL, and what intrigued me so much about it was that it was backed by the NBA, so it was going to be top tier professional. And granted, yes, it did happen. It did take place during the whole COVID era, so there were many restrictions. I couldn't see. We were based in Kigali, Rwanda. I couldn't get to really take in the culture there, which I really wish I could. I wish I could have. But the bubble in itself, it was great. We ate like by time scheduled or whatever the case is, because they didn't want too many teams all at once. We got COVID tested every day. The league itself was very professional and competitive. Like you had guys truly competing and wanting to, show what they were capable of, and then being able to go against other Americans that I've came across in my career, on top of other players that I haven't played against in other leagues. It was a good experience for me. It was a really good experience for me, and I got to meet people outside of basketball. That was also great.
So from that experience, you kind of go back with the G League as well. So like you've kind of got these NBA, I don't want to say adjacent because they are NBA run, whether it's or backing or whatever, but once again, you're kind of coming back to the NBA sphere, so to speak. You go to Birmingham. You've kind of got all these little spots in the way too before you get to where we are now. Played in the Dominican Republic, played in Canada. Take us through what this stretch is like before we get to your current spot.
It was like going back to deciding to go back to the G League was just this long blur of a journey of just like, oh my goodness, I need a break from overseas. And it was like I came across Birmingham, and Ryan Pannone, a really good guy, he's a good guy, good coach. He was honestly that he was the person I needed at that point in my life in regard to seeing another person that cared so much about you as a person. It's like, put basketball to the side for a second. How are you as a person? And you don't really get that asked too often as a pro athlete, let alone from a head coach. So me being the veteran guy, obviously I knew the D League or G League now. And at the end of the day, basketball is basketball to me. I know how to cope or adjust to any system. And it was just a breath of fresh air being back in the States, being around everybody that spoke English, and it was something that I needed. And from there, I kind of locked in and had this realization that if I'm gonna hoop to the wheels fall off. So I usually would take a week to 2 weeks off and go vacation after each season. And due to some of the injuries that I've, sustained throughout my career, I was like, man, hell no. Why do I need a rest? It's like when I'm hurt, I miss the game. So why be healthy and and take time off as well? So for me, going from Birmingham to DR, my first time playing in South America, that it was also good for me to be around a different style. They played very fast, a little bit more physical, and then just playing in that heat, it was good. So the gyms were indoor, outdoor. It was very cool. So you're in the gym and then the roof is completely open, and the fans were like, they were so into these games, and that was the main catalyst for me is the fans, because I think basketball is an entertainment game. And again, energy is like, you just need it. DR was great. Head coach was great. So I went from kind of seeing, a mixture of not so good, unprofessional type people in regard to coach's standpoint or how our organization is, from going from like really good people all in a row. And it was great. From Birmingham to DR, from DR to the Canadian League, the professionalism was A1. And then it pretty much set me up for this situation that I'm in now in Abu Dhabi.
That's really interesting, because I think that, in terms of leagues in North America, we kind of don't even think about those very often. North, or I guess in terms of the Caribbean or the South America. So it's interesting when, you're talking about how good the experience was in the Dominican. We've had some guests recently that have talked about, now granted, it's technically part of the same country. Puerto Rico's excellent. Had different opinions on Mexico, but it's interesting to see how much people like it, especially how it stacks up with what you might think is, top tier in Europe. And that some of these places, maybe the competition isn't quite as high, but in terms of the treatment, it's either the same or maybe even debatably better. So that's
right.
Actually kind of interesting to hear yet again. But you're coming to us now, I guess live or recorded, however you want to say it, from Abu Dhabi. Again, another new experience, and this is another area of the world, or another region, I guess I should say, that you haven't been in professionally anyway. What's this season been like for you so far? How are things going in terms of getting acclimated to yet another new area? Although I know you said earlier it doesn't necessarily phase you as much, it is still a little bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. I think Abu Dhabi is honestly probably one of the best places I've been in my life, like hands down. I can't big this place up enough in the regard of how it is from out off the court to, pretty much English is the first language learned here. You have Arabic, you have people that are Indian, you have some Filipino, some people from Taiwan and such and such. Then you also have a solid handful of Americans that reside out here as well. And that's, again, that's the great part for me that makes me enjoy my time as a basketball player that much more. When my family's completely comfortable. So my wife's comfortable, my daughter's comfortable. This is one of the safest areas in the world. I think it won an award for being like the safest country in the world for like the 6th straight year. So that right there tells you a lot. There's so much to do for from the family standpoint. Like, it's ridiculous. Like we've done so much in this city, and we probably still haven't even scraped the surface. And then from the basketball perspective, sure, it is lesser competition than what I'm used to. But with no mistake, it doesn't take away from me still staying at the highest level. You could take me today and put me on Team USA, and I'll play the same way I did when I was with Team USA. And that just comes in with the preparation and yada yada yada. But the head coach that I have, he's a great guy. And again, I think it all started with Birmingham, and then however God just lays out our life, that we have to go through certain things to basically come at a point where you're kind of at peace. And I think at a point in my career, I chased the competition level. I always knew the money would come. I chased the competition level, and at a point, I would say the money and the competition level. And I was happy playing basketball, but I wasn't happy like wholly. Like it wasn't the full circle. Oh, I'm happy. I think right now at this point in my life and where I'm at, it's the happiest I've been as a professional athlete. So it's a real testament to God and a testament to just this situation being in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East.
It's an interesting point that I think you bring up, and I don't know if we necessarily drill down on it enough, but I'm going to try to do that with you. So you kind of talk about, as an overseas athlete, you are potentially chasing several different things. Like you said, competition level, to some degree, money. I mean, let's be realistic. Everybody's got to have some amount of money to live, comfort off the court. And I mean, it's great that you're in a situation now where it kind of feels like it's all, like you said, come together. But kind of like looking big picture back on your career, how much of it would you say that you were looking for competition level when you really kind of started looking for, like, okay, I don't want to take too, you never really want to go completely down and abandon competition whatsoever. But when you're looking, okay, I'm looking a little bit more for money, or I'm looking a little bit more for fit. What is that like looked for you? Because you've got now a 10-year career. If you could kind of try to break it down into percentages, what you've been looking for and what you've actually kind of gotten, I guess, is the end result.
Competition was 90%. Like competition for me was everything, because again, I was somebody that didn't have a name, and I wasn't ranked high in high school. And being in New York, it's just that dog eat dog type mentality. It's like you always got to prove your worth. Why are you this good? You say you're good, prove it. And I always wanted to prove it. I always, not now because I'm older and I'm more relaxed, always had a chip on my shoulder. So even when I was killing at the highest level in Europe, it was not enough for me. And when I did that, when I had that mentality, it was almost draining me also. So I never looked at it in the regard of being like, yo, you're here, be where your feet are, and just appreciate where you're at. And it was always the next step, the next step, the next step. Who's next? Who's next? Who's next? And I no longer chase that. And I did have that point where I chased the NBA also, but then I came back to that realization of I just wanted to play basketball. Basketball made me happy. And whenever I played basketball, I didn't care about anything else that was happening that was either stressing me out from before. And that could sound like a cliche, but it is legit. Like, I'm playing basketball. What? I just had a fight. Who does what? Doesn't matter. Like, so yeah, it's the competition level was 90%. The money was 10 because I knew it was coming. I knew it was a part of it. And granted, yes, this situation out here is still great from the money perspective, but it's just competition level is not as high. But I'm okay with that because I know what I'm still capable of and what I still do on the court. And then on top of my family being happy and being here with me.
And I mean, it's probably fair to say that 5 years ago, if this offer had come along, you'd be like, I'm not interested in it because it's not the competition level.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So
100%.
It's definitely interesting that you've got to kind of balance it. We've come across this before where there's some I guess we call them real world sort of things. It's a little unfair to talk about it, like basically be dismissive of somebody who plays professional sports is like not having a real world job. But it's, I think, like in terms of conceptually, like when we as the non-athletes think about it, we're thinking in our like, all right, what's it like to be a lawyer? What's it like to be a banker? What's it like to be a salesman? What's it like to be whatever? But it's a lot of some of the same stuff that applies to your job that, you have to consider in terms of fit. You've got to consider how much am I going to be making and it's going to be making me happy. One of the things that also kind of comes back as a concept with some of our other guests is I got a job because of somebody that I knew. So it's interesting to kind of see from, it's me recording today, but it's usually two people that have quote unquote normal, regular jobs, that how much still applies in the world of basketball and the world of sport. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can't speak to a 9 to 5er, or because I've never actually experience it myself. Well, basketball is all I know.
It's overrated.
But understanding life as I've come to be, and being around these different coaches and stuff like that, and just paying attention to people, all these life skills that I need as an athlete is what takes place in the real world, as with whatever interpersonal relationship, whatever job that you have. All of these matter: being hard work, being on time, professional, getting your stuff, your work done. All of these things mean everything. So yeah, man, it's at the end of the day, everybody's on a grind, man, one way or the other.
Rashad, thanks so much again for joining us today to talk about your international overseas basketball career. We still have a lot to talk about in the Expat Extras. Care to stick around for a few Expat Extras?
Absolutely, Andy. Right here for it.
All right, great. Well, if you're listening to this podcast, wherever you find your audio podcast, be sure to check out YouTube. We have the Expat Extras that we'll be getting up here shortly. And if you're just watching on YouTube, just let it play to the next video. But thanks for watching this episode of Expat Hoops.
Hello, and thanks for watching. Be sure to give the video a like, and you can watch more videos over here. You can also click subscribe over here so you're notified when we have new content here on Expat Hoops.